Once you've installed the Colorway for Modo kit inside of Modo, you might want to set up your own Colorway layout. There are specific tutorials on how to set up layouts in Modo, but I'll show you an example of the one that I've set up, which works for me. First of all, I've starred the only layouts that I need to use when I'm exporting 3D assets for Colorway. And then over on the right, I click on the star only so that I can access those quickly. The first thing to do when setting up the Colorway for Modo kit is in the render window, or in this case, in my custom Colorway window, I go down to the bottom here where I have 3D view. And at the plus button, I go down to application, select custom view, and press Colorway. This gives me a whole new set of options specific to rendering for Colorway. It gives me the option to tag each of the parts that I want the user to be able to edit inside of Colorway. By clicking the icon next to those parts, I'm giving permission for the Colorway user to change the color. So, for example, in this project, I don't want the user to be able to update the shadow catcher. I only want them to be able to update the exterior leather and the interior material. I also have a lights tab. Again, if I click on the icon next to each of those lights, I'm giving permission for the Colorway user to adjust those lights inside of Colorway. It doesn't mean that I'm not including them in my render, it just means that I'm not giving permission for someone to edit them. Then I have my views. These are all the camera views that have been set up inside of Modo, and I can tag which ones I want to render. Each one of these views renders as an individual DCI item. So let's preview this item and select the different views. Each one of these views will be rendered out as an individual DCI item, editable in Colorway. And then finally, the render settings. There are some advanced render settings for Colorway, including creating a Colorway project straight from the Modo for Colorway kit. There's a separate tutorial on this, but for now, we can focus on these first 3 tabs. In addition to this Colorway tab down here, we also have a Colorway button. When you click on that button, you can press Tag All Materials. And Colorway will prompt you to tell you that it's now going to tag all materials. You can see down here that every material has been tagged. You can go back and individually untag materials as well. From the Colorway button, you can also remove all the material tags. It's exactly the same for cameras, and it's also the same for lights. You can tag them all, or you can untag them all. You can also untag the environment, and you can create a Colorway project from inside this Colorway button as well. Finally, you can render the scene for Colorway. A third way of doing this inside Modo is by going up to the Render tab, selecting Colorway at the bottom, and you have all the same options, tagging your materials, your cameras, your lights, and then rendering the scene for Colorway. Once you render the scene for Colorway, a dialog appears prompting you whether you want to enable reflections and refractions, auto-tag all the materials, or create a Colorway project. By default, none of these are selected. If you have metallic objects or glass inside of the scene and you want the reflections and refractions to change inside the Colorway application, it's recommended that you press Enable Reflection and Refractions. If you have any metal items on your object, any glass items on your object, or if you have glass in front of the object, be sure to click this button. When you press OK, a dialog will appear asking you where to save the object. Type the name of the object. So for example, iPhone case 001. You'll notice from this dialog that I have previous versions saved. And every view, every camera view, has been added to the end of the file extension. So I've just typed iPhone case 001. When I press the save button and Modo starts rendering, it will save an individual DCI for every single camera view and automatically adds the camera view name to the end of my file. I don't have to do that manually. Press the save button, and Colorway asks you to check that you have all the details correct. Here you can see that I have two materials tagged, and that's the two materials, exterior leather and interior material. I have one light, which is my area light, and I have one environment, and they're currently tagged for export. It then asks, are you ready to render? The reason this dialog appears is because you might have forgotten to tag your materials, or you might have forgotten to tag your lights. You can then press no, go back and tag those items, and then render again. Or press yes, and the Modo for Colorway kit will start rendering.